some of you may know me from the Pagans and Witches Amino app where I'm a leader, but this is my first YouTube video and I'm hoping to post videos every Wednesday, so stay tuned. This is my first video. I'm going to talk about Samhain, which is an upcoming pagan holiday, its mythological significance, historical significance, and its significance to modern pagans like us who just want to practice the religion and come to some form of greater understanding through our practice. So the word Samhain literally means summer's end in modern Irish. So it literally is this time in which there's a change from the light half of the year to the dark half of the year. For ancient Celtic tribes, this meant that this was their last harvest, and it was a time to cull through the cattle to decide which cattle were too weak or sick to last through the winter. And they would slaughter these particularly weak animals and have a feast, which was on Samhain Eve. In Irish, it's called this. It was called the Feast of the Dead, and it was really a time to celebrate the lives of those who had died in the previous year and celebrate the spirits that live on. Ian Corrigan says that to die was not the tragedy it is in modern times. They desired to die with honor and to live in the memory of the clan and be honored at this feast. So this time of year was really a time to fatten up and get this sustenance that we need to prepare ourselves for a long winter. This time between Samhain and midwinter, when the days are going to just get shorter and there's going to be more darkness coming into our lives. We have to fill ourselves with joy and fill ourselves with sustenance to get through that harsh season. Samhain is really at this point of liminality between darkness and light, and death and life. So for modern pagans, we'll often say that on this day, the veil between the worlds is the thinnest, the time when we can communicate with the spirit world and communicate with the ancestors and the spirits of the land. Others will say that during this time, the sun god's power is waning and the darkness of the goddess kind of takes over and takes control of our lives. So there's a lot of mythology that surrounds this day, especially in medieval Irish, Welsh, and Scottish literature. So for the Irish, a particularly significant myth is that of Morgan and the Dagda. Morgan and the Dagda met every year on or around Samhain, and in one particular myth, they met on this day and consummated their love. And after their little sexcapade, they decided to arrange for battle against the Fomorians, who were a warring clan with the Tuatha When we're looking at this myth, we kind of have to think about who these characters really were in context. So the Morgan was the washer at the ford. She was the one who warned warriors who were going out to battle when they were going to die. And she also overlooked the battlefields, and she had this very significant connection to death. And she, in a sense, is sort of the goddess of death. The Dagda, on the other hand, is somewhat of a comical figure. He has a lot of sex and does a lot of very lively things, and in a way, he kind of represents life in this story. And so Samhain really is this meeting point of life and death. And at this meeting point, they decided to move forward, to protect themselves and to protect their clan, and to move their civilization forward. So what we can kind of derive from this is that in these points of liminality, where these forces kind of seem blurred to us, you use that inspiration to move yourself forward and to move your life forward. So for the Welsh, Caradwyn is associated with Samhain quite often because she's this goddess of wisdom and darkness. Mainly, she's known for her stories of transformation and her cauldron of Awen. Caradwyn's son, Mothran, was very ugly. So she sought out to compensate for his ugliness by creating a cauldron of Awen that would allow him to become smart. So he would be ugly and at least he's smart. She employed a young boy named Gwion Bach to stir her potion. and accidentally a couple drops of her potion fell out and landed on his hand. So this kind of gave him the powers that she was trying to give to her son. Knowing that he would get in trouble, he runs, and she goes right after him. He turns into a hare so that he can run faster, and she just turns into a greyhound. And he turns into a fish to get in the water, so she just turns into an otter and goes right after him. And then he turns into a small bird, and she transforms into a hawk. Ultimately, he decides, okay, I'm just going to become a tiny piece of corn. She just eats the piece of corn. Eventually, she realizes that she's pregnant, and when the child is born, she plans on killing this child because she knows that it's Bak who stole these powers from her son. But when he was born, he was so beautiful that she couldn't bring herself to kill him. So instead, she threw him into the sea. There's a lot of different versions of this part, but she throws him into the sea, and he becomes rescued on a Welsh shore, and he grows up to be Taliesin the Bard, and this story ends up being written in the Book of Taliesin. So once again, we kind of see transformation and transfiguration through these points of liminality. Literally, he's going through different worlds and transforming into these different animals that can subsist in these lands. So what we can really take from this is that, yes, this is a time of immense change in all of our lives, but if we can just allow that change to change us, allow ourselves to change and adapt to our situations, we can have those powers too, and we can move forward and become reborn, ultimately. The goddess Cailleach is both Scottish and Irish, but I'm going to focus on the Scottish Cailleach. So she's known as the ruler of the dark half of the year, whereas Bridget is the ruler of the light half of the year. She's represented as this old hag who has just become decrepit over the years. It's said that she ushers in the winter by washing her plaid in this special waters in Scotland. And when her plaid becomes so clean that it just becomes simply white, she lays it on the land, and this becomes the snow. Some lore that surrounds this is the first farmer who finishes harvesting their crops is expected to make this corn dolly out of corn husks, and it represents the goddess, this hag goddess. He'll then throw it into the field for the last harvester to claim. So ultimately they're competing to be faster so that they don't have to house this old hag and be expected to keep her all year and clean her and feed her. So this kind of mythos actually seems to represent this pursuit against our natural habitat and this way to fight against the winter. There was this extreme desire to keep the tribes alive during the winter, and so this kind of must have motivated people to harvest faster. In this case, liminality really brings opportunity. Samhain is considered the new year to modern witches and pagans. It's a time of rebirth and transformation. The seasons are so cyclical. We plant the seeds now that will finally sprout when we arrive at Imbolc, and then at Beltane it will finally be flourishing again. And then next Samhain we'll have our last harvest and plant the new seeds. Now is a time to really plant the seeds and to put in the work. In my personal life, I find that there's a lot of things that seem to be ending right now. But I have to understand at the same time that this void is so fertile. And from this fertile void, if I just plant the seeds and put in the work and just work towards my goals, I can trust that in time I can flourish. This liminality is really interesting because while things are dying, things are also being born. And it really blurs the sense of past, present, and future. Nietzsche talked about the present as a fixed point between two infinities, and ultimately every possibility will occur within those infinities. For every X, there is a Y. I hope that we can use this time to celebrate this precise point between two infinities. I want to celebrate that there's this moment right now where the choices you make will affect you for the next cycle of your life, whether that's the year or your time in college, your time in high school. Right now we're planting the seeds and they will sprout for us. As long as we use this time to fill ourselves with the sustenance and to have these feasts and mourn the dead, we have to remember what we've lost during this year and use this time to kind of reflect on what we've gotten from those things, even though we no longer have them. Because ultimately those things will affect what we're working for in the future. So I'm really reflecting on what the past has given me and what the past has taken away, and what I can do to fill myself so that I'm able to give my future the fullest and most bountiful harvest of joy and love and worldly gifts. Anyway, I got real serious there for a minute, but paganism is a very personal religion, and each year, every time I celebrate these holidays, it takes on a different meaning for me based on where my life is. But I always feel that I can derive some inspiration and understand the way that the Earth's cycles affect my life and affect how I feel. We're not so divorced from our history, in which death was so imminent and a part of our daily lives. We're not so divorced from this tribal culture in which our main goals were simply to keep the tribe alive. I think in a modern age, we have to remember that we're still a species and that we're still human beings that are on this earth. And the earth's seasons and the way that plants die and leaves change affects us, not only on a physical level of what foods you can buy at the grocery store, but also on an emotional level. And with that, it's getting dark here in upstate New York, so I'm going to embrace this liminality of the light half of the day and the dark half of the day, go catch the bus, go to studio class, and play some oboe. But thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Okay, I did that shit.